Writing a book is scary. Writing a book based on your lived experience, also scary. Writing a book based on your lived experience that other people who were there with your lived experience get to read about it, very scary. Writing a book where the whole world gets to read about your lived experience, also very scary. And yet we all have the pull to write anyways. So today I'm sharing with you a conversation that I had with Whitney Uland. She's a life coach who helps people feel comfortable being seen. And when you are writing a book, especially about yourself, you are being seen on a big level by a lot of people, people who know you and people who don't know you either, which is what we want, but that doesn't mean that it is easy. Hi, if you're new here, my name is Kayla. I am writing a young adult dystopian fantasy series based on my experience of growing up in poverty. And one of the things that's been such a pull on my brain is what will people think when they read this, especially the people who I grew up with, i.e., my family. And very recently, what I haven't told y'all is that my family now knows that I am writing this. My sister, hi, if you are watching, has told me that she has watched these YouTube videos, and I talk about that with this coach, my friend Whitney Uland, in this conversation on how does that feel? How do I get through it? How do I keep moving forward with this story that I believe is important to share?
I am so excited for today's interview and to have my good friend Whitney Uland here with me. Whitney, I know, is going to give us so much insight where we, as people who are writers, sharing our stories and sharing the things that we are inspired by, can feel good and safe in doing that, as well as y'all know that on this channel, a big part of the writing that I am doing is growing up in the childhood in the way that I did. And Whitney has already personally helped me process through so much of that so that I can become the woman that I am today, so that I can feel even like ready to share my book. Like, I'm sure we'll get into it, but very literally, y'all, I would not be here writing my book if it wasn't for this woman. And I believe it was like February of this last year where you blew my mind and that happened. So Whitney, I'm so excited to have you. Why don't you start by just telling everybody who you are and what it is that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just so grateful and honored to be here. And I'm so grateful to call you a friend as well. And yeah, so my name is Whitney Uland. I am a self-made celebrity and I am a coach to celebrities. So I help good-hearted artists, creatives, influencers, and entrepreneurs create the resource of fame, which is just the resource of having people's attention. And we actually do this through mindset work, mindset coaching, and through helping, I help clients feel safe being seen for who they authentically are in their authentic stories, in the missions, in the stories, in the content that they want to put out in the world. Because the truth is, the content is like the actual, I mean, you've written your book, so you know this, where it's like, obviously the sitting down and like writing is a challenge, but really the hard part is the excavation and the like feeling safe enough to have those ideas be unleashed and to feel safe actually sharing them. So I have the coolest, most fun job ever. And yeah, that's basically
You
what I do.
really do. You really do. And I think I love the way that you just described that a little bit more because I think when people hear the idea of fame, like people get like a little like, ugh. And I think so much of even like here on like AuthorTube, as I guess that is like the niche that I'm part of technically. I think that it's so interesting because I would guess that so many people aren't thinking I want to be famous, but I know all the authors on here are thinking, I want everyone to read my book. I want so many people to read my art and see that. And it's like, it's not different then, right? Because it's the resource of their attention to read your book, right? Is that correct?
Exactly. Exactly,
Yeah.
100%. And it's so funny. I still have this. Oh, it's right here. This thank you note that you sent me. When we were working together, where you were like, "Thank you for bullying me into doing the mastermind because you are someone who," and I think a lot of writers, and entrepreneurs, and a lot of people that I work with do kind of need a little bit of that push. And
Hmm.
like we joked that I was bullied. I was like, "You're doing this mastermind, your mission, like what you have." I was like, I don't know what's next. I don't think. I mean, the book wasn't even really on the table at the time,
Mm-mm.
right?
Yeah.
But it was, and I do think one of my gifts is that I can tell when someone has something that needs to be like on the outside that is still inside. But I think that, yeah, I hear that a lot of people who have resistance, especially to the word fame or to the word famous. And they can get on board with like, okay, this is just visibility and this is,
Hmm.
making an impact and getting my work actually out there. But yeah,
I think I
that's
started by saying well known. Like, yes, I'd like to be well known. I think that was
Mhm.
like my step in my own like
Yeah,
change the verbiage to whatever to do the same thing that made me feel better about it in the very, very beginning.
totally.
But
Well, and I
yeah.
have like I'm thinking of my. I hope he doesn't mind that I roast him right now because it's a my. I have a family member who I'm coaching right now, and he's a doctor, and he was like, it's not. He's like, I don't want to be famous. He's like, but I do want a seat at the table, or like I do want
Hmm.
to. He's like, there's so many people just saying whatever online, and they're underqualified, and so that's. And he's like, and I actually am a doctor. Like I know these things. I know how to help people, and so that's what like is also so fun is like, I'm not in a position where I'm like teaching someone the talent or teaching someone the. Like the craft of it,
Yeah.
but helping them like unleash it within themselves, which is amazing.
I honestly really love that. And I didn't think about it that way for you, but obviously that is the same. That's how I feel about like curriculum consulting is it's like I'm not creating the content, but I just know the best practice way to get the content into somebody. You're like, I know the best practice way to get somebody's content out of them into the world.
Yes.
And so that's really interesting.
Yes, and we also just have to plug if can I share that you helped me with my
Oh,
curriculum?
of course.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah, yeah.
great. Because I just want to I'm like so basically that was kind of we got to like do that for each other. So I had a I've developed my course curriculum over the last like 6 years, but it has been kind of like hodged like it started out while I was like building the plane while it was flying kind of thing, and then over time was able to distill it down. But the curriculum was not in a place that was really like scalable because it was kind of like mishmash like Frankenstein together. And so that was something Kayla helped me with, which was she did such a phenomenal job. My clients are all obsessed with the new curriculum of really just like getting the parts that are important and bringing that to the
Mhm.
forefront and making it just like so much clearer for my clients. So I'm just very grateful for you.
Yay! And honestly, that was just so much fun to do. And then the new coaches, and this is like obviously another conversation, are stellar. They're doing such a great job.
Yes,
So I'm super excited
yes.
about that.
Kayla also trained my new coaches, and they're absolutely crushing it. So
Oh,
it's so fun.
they are the whole thing. And when you say scale, like I just know you're going like I just can't wait to see the vision of what comes. But also, we'll get to another thing because now that your business is becoming more scalable and you are getting more support, that gives you the ability to do other things, which for you is also writing a book. So, my first question really is for myself and all the people on AuthorTube, like, what do you find for people who go to share their story? Because your book is your story as well, because yours is going to be a nonfiction kind of instructional book, correct?
Hmm.
So, what do you see when people go as like the biggest thing that gets in their way? Like, what is the biggest roadblock with like being seen and being a writer, or very specifically, like sharing your story?
Yeah. So at the most basic level, I do say it's your subconscious mind doesn't feel safe being seen in your authenticity. And that's a little bit nebulous, but ultimately what it comes down to is our interpersonal relationships and the impact that are us having visibility can have on that. As humans, we're wired to love and thrive in community and to the thing about like herd mentality, right? Like we rely on other humans to stay alive, and especially in prehistoric days. And so that has stayed a really primitive instinct. And yet, when you're writing something, you're venturing off, you're like walking off the plank. Like you're going on uncharted territory. You're a pioneer. You're going into places that haven't been done and haven't been seen before. And so that in and of itself can be really scary. I think it's also really it can be really triggering to our family members, to the people in our lives, because not only are they afraid of the visibility that might come to them, but they may not want to be hurt by what you say. Sometimes you have to, like, in order to be seen and to hold your truth, it doesn't always necessarily paint everyone in the best light. And not that you necessarily have to share all of those bits and all of those pieces. But I think oftentimes it does come down to the fear of like, what are my, and this is subconscious, right? Because you might think, and like, I have the most loving mom in the world, and like, she's amazing. And I was still afraid of her understanding and knowing things about
Mm.
me. And knowing parts of my story that I, didn't feel ready to share. And so, and this could be your romantic partnerships. These could be your friendships. These could be your colleagues. So it always comes down to the way that our mind is interpreting this visibility and seeing it as a threat to our survival, essentially.
Okay. So I love that you said so many different things that I think one, I liked what you said about walking off the plank. Like what a good visual because I feel like especially for first time writers, it is so different. It is so new. It is not something that like most of us have done before, like share deep inner workings or tell the story of what we've been through. And then you're also like trying to make it like poetic or good and grammatically correct
Yeah.
and like there's so many different things. So that's one part, just like the fear of the unknown. But
Hmm.
then it's also layered with, like you said, the fear of those interpersonal relationships of like who else is involved in my story that's going to be affected by this. So when you help people with that, what do you find is like the thing that helps them the most to like turn that, whether it is the fear of the unknown and the fear of interpersonal, is it different strategies or is there a strategy that wraps up both of those things?
Yeah, it's actually the same. And I forgot to add, there's also a third thing, and this is going to be past negative experiences that we've had in the spotlight. So if you think about like if a kid touches a hot stove, they're going to learn, oh, I'm not going to do that again, right? So if you've ever had something, I remember posting a video once and it ended up on the wrong side of YouTube. So I deleted my channel and consigned
Mm,
myself to not showing up online for a long time because I got, and like I look back now and I'm like, there were 4 hate comments and
yeah.
like 12 thumbs downs, which is like, again, like we can logically say, like, oh, that's quote unquote not real, just like, shoulder down. But if you think about it in terms of creativity, so I love this analogy that when species, especially mammals, are giving birth in the wild, they will wait until they're in a safe place in order to give birth, right? Which makes sense.
Mm,
Like if you think about a gazelle giving birth, if there's a lion around, they're not gonna the lion would come eat the baby, right? So they're not
yeah.
going to. Our that process, and I feel qualified to say this because I had an unmedicated home birth, but that creative process is the same as birthing an idea into the world, and so we have
Mm,
to feel like we're safe, or the idea is just going to stop. The idea is going, and that's where we're going to spin out in self doubt. We're going to feel confused. We're going to like not be able to pick an answer. I know I have a lot of authors who are like, they either are like, I have all of these ideas and I can't decide which one. And it's like becomes analysis paralysis. Or they
hmm.
are like, I have no idea what to write. And both of those are just your brain trying to keep you from actually birthing it because it doesn't feel
Mm,
safe for you to do it. So that was a little bit of a tangent, but in summation, those 3 reasons. So the first one being the unknown, the second being fear of separation from community, third is fear of past experiences. The way to solve for that is the exact same process, and that is the process that I'm going to oversimplify it, but basically what we have to do is we have to outsmart your brain's caveman, cave person, primitive instincts and show it, oh, it's safe for me to do this, right? This like
mhm.
that's the kind of thing that like even on this podcast, or I'm sorry, YouTube video, like anytime we get more information, our brain is like, oh yeah, that's actually not unsafe, right? It's like, oh, we get
Mhm.
that kind of dopamine hit where we're like, oh yeah, my brain is just trying to avoid this story. My brain is just trying to avoid this vulnerability, and we outsmart it. But where a lot of people get stuck is that there still is this element of your nervous system, of your body somatically feeling unsafe. So even if your logical brain knows there's no real danger in me putting my book out into the world, your
Mhm.
subconscious mind and your nervous system still thinks that that is a threat. So the process, and no matter how big or small the fear is, the process is the same. First is to outsmart it in your brain, and then second is to hack your nervous system so that your nervous system actually feels safe expanding and feels safe being seen. And
Mm.
that's, yeah, basically the same at every level. And I always say with fame, it's new levels, new devils. I actually just last night had this realization that I'm on the brink of a new
Mm.
level, but I
Yeah.
haven't, my nervous system is not expanded to hold that
Mm.
yet.
Yeah.
And so it's been showing up for me in like a lot of creative self sabotage and a lot of just panic and dread. And I have a team that supports me. And so obviously things are continuing to move forward, but my experience inside of it has been different. So, anyway, all this to say though, I realize I'm like the same work is going to I am going to have to start over now with this like new levels, new devils of expanding my nervous system and expanding my capacity to be seen at like a greater level.
I love that. I think that that's so powerful for a couple of different reasons. One, I think what you pointed out is like so often we'll see things like procrastination or, like you said, analysis paralysis, and we'll be like, what's wrong with me? I need more ideas. I need this. I need that. When really it's like, no, you need to, like, there's an inner thing happening that you just need to figure out, and then all of that will go beyond. And I think that
Really.
that's really helpful because that gives us signs that this is then the work that we need to do.
Yes,
And they're more like symptoms, right? It's like a
exactly.
symptom of that. Yeah. When
Yes.
oftentimes we treat it like the cause and we're like trying to solve like
Mm.
this. Like it's like, oh, I have a headache, so I'm trying to solve a headache, when it's really like, no, I'm actually dehydrated. So you need to drink water.
Right. No, that's so smart. And I think that's, that's something that it's always easier for me to do for clients than for myself, right? But I
Hmm.
always think, it's like I always encourage my clients to find what are my specific tells that I am in a state where my nervous system doesn't feel safe. Like what are those
Yes.
kind of and think of it like a black light where it's like, oh, every time this is popping up, or these are kind of like the red flags that I'm going towards that. Just so, and part of that is the hacking, or that's kind of the brain outsmarting, right? Or outsmarting those
Hmm.
instincts, right? So I
Yeah.
know for me, I get very like one of my go-tos is like, I mean, it kind of just looks like anxiety and like feeling low, like almost like anxiety and depression, which I don't want to minimize that, but heightened emotions and feeling of doom. That's
Mm.
like and then another symptom will be like stressing about money, stressing about things that don't like are kind of out of left field, and my brain does exactly like what you're saying. I'm like, oh, I need to solve that problem now, instead of
Yes.
like, no, that's a cover up to keep me from the real problem, which is that I'm scared out of my mind right now of the
Yes. Yeah.
visibility.
And I think mine shows up very much so in like I become like a silo. Like I put up walls around me and I become like not affectionate. I can't like accept, like if somebody comes to hug me, I'll just do like a really quick like hug. I realize that, where it's like I become like almost like hard and separate. Like I pull back and like away into myself.
That's such good awareness. I think I do that too. I notice myself
Mhm.
being, and I don't do it in like a cold way, but I do it in kind of like a like sad way. I don't know how to
Yeah.
describe it, but like,
Well, like I think it's probably more internal that I notice it than other people notice it in me. It's because it's how I receive what's happening. Like I might look the same, I might still be smiling or whatever, but it's like if someone hugs me, I don't allow myself to feel it. Like I won't
okay,
absorb whatever
yes,
care is coming from that. It's so
yes.
interesting. And now that I'm
And
aware, I'm like, I can see it and I'm like, that feels so bad also.
okay,
Like,
and that's what like it's so crazy. So ultimately the work is expanding your capacity to be seen, but to receive love and like to receive and like I was talking to my team yesterday about how I'm like I actually like when I had this realization about not being able to expand, I was like, "Oh, my nervous system is actually at capacity for receiving good." Like it doesn't feel
mm,
safe to receive anymore. And so I mean, in the line of work I do, I'm so grateful and I have the best audience. I get messages from fans in my DMs, in my inbox, in my like in LA just walking around, and I
mhm,
literally I'm at the place that I'm like I can't feel it. Like it
mm.
actually feels like too much. And so
That's so
um
interesting.
yeah, that's the work though, is expanding that capacity.
Ooh.
Because even, and I think with all of this work, there's duality in it because we would think, oh, I want to be seen. I want to have my book out there. I want compliments. I want adoration. I want to make money doing what I love. But really, again, like our nervous system, if it sees it as dangerous or sees it even just as different, or we've had past negative
Mm.
experiences, then it's going to just draw us back and want to avoid that expansion.
I think that that's really interesting to label that as, see it as dangerous or different. And I think that makes my mind go to so many different places. And maybe this ties into the other question of like, not just being a writer, but being somebody who grows up in an unstable childhood. Like if you grew up in a childhood where no one ever complimented you and stuff like that, then getting and receiving compliments are like, for me, myself, and I've been very like open on YouTube where it's like, I wasn't in a loving household. I mean, you definitely know that. Um, and so then like it took me a long time to even feel how to receive love, which I don't think I did until I met my now husband John, right? Like really actually accepted love around me. And I've learned how to accept it from like you and friendships and things like that, and being able to even say I love you to my friends and things like that. Um, and so I think it's really interesting that you bring that up, where it's like if it's different, that also makes it like you have to practice like getting used to that. And that is also part of like then later being able to create that larger, like I don't know if project is the right word, but like encompass like a bigger allowance of that. And so my thought there then is like, do you see a big difference in people who grew up in unstable childhoods versus people who've grown up in stable childhoods in doing this work?
I think it's, I mean, the process is going to be the same, whether it's, and like, I do say this with compassion. The steps are the same, but I don't think that the levels of ease that that can be accomplished with is the same. Does that make sense?
Mm,
Like, to me, it's, they're just different starting points, which is hard to make sense of and hard to grapple with. Um, but I do see, you know, I've had clients who do come from very stable homes and they still need a little bit of a push from me. They need some extra tools to kind of get to that next level. But what I found, one is again, they're usually just at a different starting point in terms of
mm,
that, and it's not as foreign to them. And so those changes happen a little bit quicker, if I'm honest. Not always,
hmm
but, and I also think we have to note that a lot of this is also just in comparison to your emotional capacity. So, for example, I
mm,
like, not that I had the perfect, most idyllic childhood, but I was, my needs were always taken care of. My family, I knew that my parents loved me. Um, thing like I did have a head start to so many people in the world, right? And yet I'm like an extremely sensitive person. So
hmm
things that were really hard on me probably wouldn't have been to some other people in my life, right? And so
yeah.
and for me, I kind of always grew up being told I was, dramatic, and because my response wouldn't necessarily seem proportional to what was happening. So I think that for and this is where it's weird and interesting. There might be people who are less sensitive that grew up in less ideal circumstances than me that don't have as hard of a time doing this work. Does that make sense?
hmm Yes, yes. And I think that it is so complicated like that, but I really appreciate what you said, where you're like, because the starting line might be somewhere different, then the work may take longer or might look different for somebody. And I think this also leans to a couple different things. So, one, one of the things that I used to always say is for myself, when I was like, I hate to use the term healed, but like unhealed and hadn't like started this work, I used to feel so angry if anybody else with like small t trauma was like, I'm having such a hard day. I was always like, fuck off. Like until you've been
Totally.
in my situation, you're not right. So like that was like very much I was in victim mode and things like that. So it was very hard for me to hear that someone else would like have to go through the same process or have the same opportunity or something like that. And I actually had a question down here because you're the third like coaching professional that I've interviewed for this, and the other one was on love, and the other one was on the mother-daughter relationship, and they kind of said the same thing. They're like, the work is the same. And hearing that, I feel like a lot of people who are in it could be like, that makes no sense. That feels so unfair to me. But I like that you're
It
saying
is.
the work is the same, but the start line is different. Because I'm like,
It is.
there's something different about the situation when you grow up in an unstable not. Because why would the statistics be what they are, right?
100%. 100%. I
hmm
also think I like to equate coaching to physical training, right? So when if you're an athlete, there's going to be times that you need a physical, or I'm sorry, let's say, we're going to start over. Clearly, I'm bad with sports. Um, but basically, with the idea that like I'm a coach, the same way an athlete would have a coach, but if they get injured, they need to go to a physical therapist to really like work on that injury. And sometimes that takes them out of the game for a while. And sometimes it does,
mm
and I will just say, so I was diagnosed last summer with CPTSD, which is complex post-traumatic stress disorder, which is instead of necessarily one big T trauma, it's a lot of small T traumas sustained over an extended period of time. And so with that, once I got that diagnosis, it was like an injury in my brain. And
Hmm.
I think that and so it literally has been almost a full year of actually just maintaining my life and business because I didn't have the capacity to grow while I was also healing. And that
Mm,
sucks. And um, it's I'm not 100% like healed, but I'm at the point now that I'm intuitively like, okay, it's time to grow again. And I
hmm.
have the support and I have the systems and I'm just in such a different place. And so, but I guess I would say like to anyone who's in that position where it's like it does maybe and I do see this a lot with clients where they might start this work and then be like and then we've got to put like a little time out because something comes up that they do need
Hmm.
to be addressed with a medical professional. And I just want to say like if that's the position you're in, it sucks. Like and I think just I just have compassion because it's not ideal. And it's also worth it. Like
Yeah.
it is worth it.
And that's what I was thinking too. Like when I think about like, yeah, I could sit around and like worry about being like years behind other people and all these things as my start line. And there have been times where I've like fallen into that and I've struggled with that. And like we
Yeah.
worked through that a lot when we first met. Like my whole first place energy, I was like, I've run a marathon. Everyone else ran a 5K. It was the best way I felt like I could describe it. And it's like I could sit in that, but what does that get me? That's my personal take. Is I'm like, it doesn't get me anywhere to
It's
do
not
that. What I could
helpful.
do is work on fixing it and just moving forward with where I'm at because it's so worth it to work on it and keep moving than to stay here because yeah, it might take me 2 years to get here, but I still get here, you know?
Well, and I would also offer that the benefit that you can't hack unless you've been through it is deeper human empathy and deeper
Mm,
levels of human experience. So even though I think it can be hard and challenging to witness, again, like people even just like after I graduated college, I was like on the track to like I was like I'm going to be on Broadway. And then my dad died. Like and all of my friends booked Broadway and like it feels like I kind of had to go a longer meandering path and it's there's been a lot of time since then and all my friends are doing amazing and this is not any way to slight them, but I know that I have a deeper level of empathy, compassion and experience based off of all of those left turns that life took
hmm.
me on.
Yeah.
And that's something that only life can get you. And so
Hmm.
it's hard in those moments to be like, okay, but this person is quote unquote further ahead, but giving it the time and the space. Also, life is a great equalizer. Like it does find we all have
Yeah.
our things to
Yeah.
go through. Um, and again, I used to like I was raised Mormon and I hated that idea of like God gives his toughest battles to his strongest soldiers or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, I hated that. But I can also look back now and just say like I thought that I always wanted to be where I'm at right now in my career, but I actually wasn't strong enough for it and I actually didn't have the
Mm,
capacity and I wouldn't have if I hadn't gone through all the things that I have.
yeah. Yeah. Well, and I was thinking as you were saying that too, and to like kind of go back to the very beginning of this whole thinking about the unstable childhood and what we've been through. And I do agree that like, yeah, adversity makes you stronger. You learn things that you wouldn't if you didn't go through it. But one of the things too that I was thinking about, there was something you said in the beginning that made me realize when we think about, um, I think it was when I was mentioning like big T trauma, whatever. And before you kind of shared about like multiple small T traumas, is that, and I know this is one of the things that you teach, but it reminded me of your teaching points of like the different quantum leap relationships where it's like, yeah, my big T trauma is around like my family, but like yours, as you said, growing up in Mormon, yours was growing up in a cult. So it's like very different the way that like what we would all have to process and what would be like the trigger things for us that would create us not wanting to be seen and not wanting to share our story, etc, because all of like the scars and everything are very, very different. So I think that's something to take into account too. Like somebody could come out, even if they weren't in an unstable childhood, come out with similar traumas through a totally different avenue.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. And there can be, there could be financial instability. There could be like, I don't know, like even for me, I actually
Mm-hmm.
think growing up with the news on all of the time was actually really like,
Mm,
that was really hard on my nervous system because I kind of, and then that plus Mormon teachings, I kind of just was taught that the world is scary and dangerous. And again, so even though that's like, I would look at that on paper and be like, that's not as bad as maybe the, like some of the things you've told me, but it also still did impact my nervous system. And I
Yeah.
think for a lot of people, the work and so much of this is that no matter what those traumas were, it comes back to give the first thing has to be giving yourself compassion for them and whatever that looks like. Because I think it is and can be really easy to look at other people like almost the opposite of like judging, but to be like, well, they have it, like that person deserves to feel bad about what they've been through. I should just be
I
grateful
should not. Yep.
that mine wasn't worse, kind of thing. But unfortunately, your nervous system doesn't understand that. And
Yeah.
so
Yes.
then it ends up sending a very conflicting messaging inside your body. And I think also going back to, what things are harder to process or not, it also just depends on how deep it goes back and how layered it is.
Oh, and the thing that I found for myself though, that like offering compassion, I actually found that the hardest part because I felt like I understood like what I'd been through and all of these things, and I felt like I could understand my triggers and all of that really well, but like I just could not, and I still struggle practicing like this giving myself compassion piece. Do you find that people, am I the only one? Am I,
No,
there can't, I
that's
can't be.
so I think that is something that I think only is instinctual if your mother patterned it to herself. That's just a theory that I have.
Which
That
very few of our moms did.
Right.
Let's
So
be
like
honest.
even like my mom is so loving towards me, but she's always really hard on herself. So then I picked that up. So then it's hard for me to be kind to myself, even though I have so much love and compassion for literally anyone and everyone else. And the clients who I have worked with and friends that I have who like their moms were very compassionate to themselves and they gave themselves a lot of grace, that usually then is mirrored for them. And it's easier. But I think
That's so interesting.
also just, if you think about how our brains are wired to just always look for threats and always look for danger to make sure that we're safe, our brains don't think that compassion is safe because then we'll put down some hypervigilance and we'll
It's
stop
soft. Yeah.
looking for, the predator that's obviously going to come and eat us.
What
And
are some of the,
feels
oh, sorry,
safe.
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Uh, what are some of the ways that you've seen your clients like give themselves compassion? Like, what does that actually look like?
So I always teach my clients this little formula. I say little. This actually is something that I'm like, if every person in the world did this, it would change everyone's entire life. So I'm going to use a metaphor first. So I have a 3-year-old. He doesn't always want to get in his car seat, right? And he's playing. He doesn't want to get strapped down. When I have to put him in the car seat anyway, though, and let's say he's crying, he's upset. I'm not like, don't be upset, like suck it up, whatever. I'm like, yeah, bud, like of course you're upset. This sucks, huh? Like of course you don't want to quit playing. You don't want to be strapped down in your car seat. I get that. And I'm your mom. I'm in charge. I'm not just going to let you roll around in the back seat. So we are going to put on your car seat. Like we are going to buckle it up. So the formula from that we can extrapolate and then we reflect back onto ourselves is, of course, you're feeling XYZ. It makes sense because of XYZ. And what is also true? What are we going to decide also? What decisions are we going to make? What actions are we going to take in spite of it? And that's where it becomes this like actual reparenting of ourselves, where it becomes this like almost dichotomy where you're holding complete space for the experience that you're having, but you're not necessarily letting that just like how I'm not going to let my son's tears mean that I'm not going to strap him into the car seat. Just because I'm sad or I'm stressed doesn't mean that I'm not going to also, or like just because I'm overwhelmed doesn't mean I'm not going to write my book, right? Like because I'm an adult
Yes.
and I want the book into the world. So this is the formula. So of course I'm feeling, let's say, I'll use the example of what I was saying. Of course I'm feeling overwhelmed. It makes sense because, and this is where we kind of go into the context. Why does it make sense I'm overwhelmed? Well, I'm expanding in new ways. I'm learning to trust a new team. My financial obligations have just doubled. Like, I have no idea if this is going to work. Like, of course, any business owner would feel a lot of stress right now.
Hmm.
And that doesn't mean that we're just going to like shut down and like become a like hermit and disappear, and like we're going to show up anyway. And so really any this can be used for any case, I guess, this
Yeah.
formula. And it really is this internal thing of holding space for yourself while also
Hmm.
still continuing to move in the direction that you want.
So I love that. It made me think of a bunch of different things. So first, I think it's really interesting to put it in that mind of like reparenting of self. Because I know when you've coached me in the past, you've been like, what did you wish your mom would have done? Do that right now. Or when you were a little kid and you needed a snack or to play, what would it be? Go do that today. And so I do think that's really powerful to like pull back on. But it made me think of two different things. One, and so I want to say them both so I don't forget, and then we'll talk about both. One, do we think like in some way our love languages could tie into this, because that's almost like words of affirmation in a way, love languages, but I find often that what I need is physical touch. Like if I'm feeling really, and I feel very thankful to have like my partner, but a lot of times like one of the best things he can do for me is literally like he'll massage my feet and like my calves, or like give me a long hug, and that changes the game for me. And I think that that has a lot of like, that's what I wished my mom would have done a lot of times, is like hug me and
Yeah.
hold me. I didn't get a lot of that. But the other thing too is I love that you said, and I think this is a really great way to introduce it, because that's how we want to interact with this, is like, and I'm not going to let my son's tears not make me strap him in the car seat. But I see where people sabotage themselves is they let their tears not strap them into the car seat. And then they're just like,
Yeah.
rolling around everywhere. And I think that that's really important, is to have that. And we're still going to move forward piece. Cause I think a lot of people are like, tears, it's over. I'm done. I'm out,
This means something's wrong.
So,
Well, they go one way or the other. So I used to just
mhm,
barrel through everything and just
mhm,
be like, do it anyway, show up, show up. And then there's also people that are like, I'm upset. That means something is wrong. I'm going to shut down and stop completely.
mhm.
But yeah, I think I also just remembered while you were saying that I had kind of forgotten how much coaching I gave you in the beginning of getting you back to play. And I
Mhm.
do think that is something that is maybe a little bit more unique to people with tougher childhoods, is because, and I hope it's okay that I share this.
Yeah, of course.
You
I'm an
tell me I'm not,
open
but
book.
okay, great. But a lot of the process of art, right? It's creativity, it's creation, but it's play. It's literally getting
Hmm.
into that imaginative space. And for a lot of people, like didn't have it literally wasn't safe enough for you to play as a kid.
Hmm.
And it was, you had to have adult survival mechanisms from a really young age. And that question of like, okay, but what did you need as a child? What did you want as a child? Like I remember giving you homework of being like, okay, what was the snack that you always wanted
Hmm.
your family to get and maybe you never did? Go get that for
Hmm.
yourself and go play with it. And a
Yep.
lot of it is just like unleashing what's coming up for you right
Hmm.
now.
Can you tell I'm getting emotional? Um,
Yeah.
just the other day, it could have been literally only 2 days ago. Um, John looked at me and he said, I haven't seen you so like freely happy and like playful. He's like, since you were teaching. And I like looked at him and I was like, hmm. And I thought about it for a minute, and we were just talking about, or like in my mind, like I went through all of these things where like when I was teaching, I think that was, and we might have talked about this one time, it was like the safest place where I could play. And I played all the time as a teacher. Like I was
Yeah.
literally on the floor with kids. I was coloring. I did every project with them. Like whenever they went to art, I went and sat in art and did the art project with them. I played on the playground every recess, like all of those things. And I think it was really hard for me to leave teaching because it took all of that away. And so while I still loved like the coaching business and stuff that I had, it wasn't the same in my body. And so now I can see how even just our conversation now, that's like nervous system, not complete regulation, because I didn't have that piece that brought me like self-love and self-care. And so I think now that I've been writing my book and doing these things, that it's really allowed me to be in a different way. And I think obviously being in the mastermind was a huge catalyst to that. And I'll never forget the February call when we were traveling back to Portland and my mind was blown. And I feel like ever since then, but I also think like moving to New York helped be, I know your circumstances aren't the thing, but it was a very good catalyst to like shake my brain enough to like get into the different thoughts that help me participate differently with the world. So I feel like that plus the mastermind is real, and the mastermind more so has helped me see how that had a, it wasn't even necessarily saying play. It was more just like, what internally do I actually truly want and feels good, and do that and choose that. And so that was just like, yeah, I think John
I'm
saying
just
that
going
the
to
other day really hit
contradict
me.
you on one thing, which is that I actually do think New York is a different. I know that like our thoughts create our feelings, but actually New York also creates our feelings because it's the best city
It
in the
does.
whole world. And it is it's an adult playground. Like it's an adult jungle gym. So no, I totally I think, and that's the thing that I think a lot of artists get into art because that was their safe place to play as well, and so then they kind of hang on to that. And I'm assuming that there was something subconscious in your minds that drew you to teaching because, like, to kind of like have that experience and have that. But I think also, I mean, for me as a mother now, like I'm like constantly thrown into play in ways that it's interesting that that's, even though it's play, it's not play for me anymore. Right? Like
Yeah.
I'm like, for me, play is
Different
like a
play.
day at the spa or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, something that does feel like just your desire in that moment.
It's so interesting that you say that because I think I've thought about this like once since I started writing, but as a kid, I used to write all the time and I used to think I'd be an author.
No way. Wait, I just got
Yeah.
goosebumps. That's so sweet.
Yeah. And so it was a lot of poetry when I was little, but my first grade teacher, Mrs. Johnson, which is also probably why I love first grade so much, like helped me publish my first book, which is like, I got to go find that. I got to go find that.
Oh my
But
God. Yes, you do. Please.
yeah, yeah. It was like about a dinosaur or a dragon, and he moved into a little girl's house or something like that. But it was
Can
like
we just
before the
talk
time of
about
like computers.
like teachers who do stuff like that? Like they're the fucking unsung hero. I know you were a teacher like that too. Like, but I had a teacher also who just, she really saw something in I had to do this math project, and this is also just me like humble bragging I guess, but I had to do this math project where we had to design something for our city, and I designed a city center, and she was like, this is really good. She's like, you need to present this to City Hall, and she took me to present it at City Hall, and they actually made it. They like built it, and so now I like go back and I'm like, hey, like that was an idea I had when I was 14 or whatever. But really, like, I mean, teachers who just can, like, I think that's just really special that she saw that and helped you, yes, and that.
Yeah, I think
That's
so too. And
amazing.
she's actually the same teacher that in when I was interviewing the Shonda on like love, like we had like narrowed down that she's one of the first people that in my Jello molding years showed me cares that I could know and find and trust that like a loving relationship existed. It was that same teacher. She also was
Okay,
just
wait,
like
wait. Has she come on the YouTube channel yet? We need her.
the teacher. No, I don't know where she is.
Okay,
I
I
wrote
used to
her a
apply
letter
for
on my Instagram. I'll
investigator.
send you.
I'm gonna find her.
Okay, I'll send you the letter that I wrote her on Instagram after mine Shonda's like episode. I post it,
Please
but
do.
I'll share that with you. Uh, oh, I love this so much. So here's something that I'm going to tell you that I haven't told anybody yet, and my YouTube followers will be like, "What?" But I've been waiting to share this until this because I knew we were having this call. So for the long time, one of the things that I've talked about on this YouTube channel was, do I share that I'm writing this book with my family? And the sentiment has been, my family doesn't know because I'm not in contact with my family. As you know, I went and visited my mom recently. I didn't tell her about the book. I didn't tell my sister about the book. Nothing like that. Um, and I just was like trying to absorb and just see if even seeing my mom would go well, and it did. And so that was great. And then again, I talked about that on the YouTube, and I know that you watched that. I got a text a couple days ago. My sister said, it's a long message like this. She goes, I know you're wondering if we know about your book. I do. I know about your book. I went and watched your YouTube all last night. So my sister has now devoured my YouTube. I don't think she's watched all of it. And she has told my older sister. My older sister thinks I'm keeping a secret from the family. They're deciding not to tell my mom because of my mom's health issues. They're afraid of how it will affect her. So my family does now know that I'm writing this book. And
How do you
I
feel?
had to like, at first, my body lit on fire. Like it was like hot from like the top of my head to the end of my toes and all of that. And even now I can like feel it kind of coming back up, like sharing that because I'm like, what if she watches this episode too? But
Yeah.
that's okay. This is my story. And I think I sat with that and I didn't even tell John immediately because I was like, I know that if it like comes out of my mouth that I might not be, that I just needed to like process it a little bit. And I
Yeah.
think I told him within like an hour and a half or something. Um, but I actually feel really fine. I feel really fine. And I
Yeah.
have to attribute that to like doing work with you and like thinking about this ahead of time of like, how would I feel? Um, and I just told my sister, I said, thanks for letting me know. And that was really it. She's like, do you plan on telling mom? I said, I don't really plan on talking to anybody about it. And I did also make it very clear. I said, I understand that my oldest sister, um, thinks it's a secret, but I don't feel like I'm keeping a secret from her because her and I don't ever talk. So I don't tell her about my weekend. So I don't feel like it makes sense to just call her up and tell her that I'm writing a book either. And I said, and I
Right.
don't really plan on having that conversation. And I felt really good, like clearly sharing that. And I felt surprised at the time that I felt so good sharing that. And who knows what's going to evolve? I don't know.
Yeah. I'm so proud of you, and I know that that's like, it's hard when it wasn't necessarily your timing, your timeline
Mm-hmm.
to let people know, and I think that is some of the vulnerability in doing this. Is it to me, I feel like it almost feels like a little bit of a landmine. Like I'm like, oh, there, like this landmine exists. When's my family gonna find it?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
and hopefully it gets easier for them over time to process it, and it doesn't, get worse or whatever. But I'm celebrating you. That's not an
Thank
easy
you.
thing to navigate.
I do think, and part of me was like, started to give myself some self judgment about, like, oh, that's a cop out. Like, Kayla, don't think that way. But I do think one of the things that I think it would have been much harder to deal with my sister saying that if I were writing like a nonfiction memoir of my life. But since it's going to be like dystopian and fantasy, like, there's literal magic in there. There's things that
Hmm.
haven't happened. There's so much artistic license. So it made me just feel more comfortable. And I didn't choose that route to feel comfortable. I chose that route because I'm
Right.
literally wearing a Harry Potter shirt right now, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what I like to read. That's why I chose that route. Um, but I did kind of judge myself for being like, well, of course like, Kayla, just remember it's just fantasy. And then I was like, no, and there's all of these other pieces, and it still is okay if you were a little scared or that you get scared again or whatever it is. So I did have that thought.
Well, that makes so much sense. And, that's something I've really tried to be so intentional with and have done better at sometimes than others. But I feel a lot of, like, to me, the biggest landmine is my ex
Hmm.
husband and navigating what parts of, because this is nonfiction and I didn't change my last name back. And so like, it feels a little, it's not necessarily protective of him. And I also, we share a child, and so trying to navigate what's best for him, for our son. Um, yeah, it's tricky. It's tricky. I got to be honest, and it's, even like I've had and that's the thing. Like I even remember thinking about like Glennon Doyle's book or whatever. I don't think
Hmm.
anyone read that book and then was like, let me go figure out who her husband was that
Yeah.
she was talking about.
And I mean, even if they do, I don't think that's anybody's takeaway from the book.
Not at all. But I can
Yeah.
also see how, now like my mother-in-law she's clearly watching all my social media, or my
Hmm.
ex-mother-in-law, right?
Oh,
And she'll, you know, keeping an eye because she's probably worried that I'm going to drag her son or, whatever, by sharing my truth. But yeah, it's tricky. I don't know. It
I
kind
will
of,
say, The one part that kind of like fired me up about what my sister wrote is she said, I just wanted to let you know that I am writing you this privately in a text and not publicly on your YouTube channel because I respect your followers. And I was kind of like, at first triggered in the way that I was like, I wouldn't want her to say this publicly. And then I was like, I'm making it public. And so then there was like that control over my story. And it makes me think, like,
Yeah.
I always thought that, I know when you at the beginning of your podcast, everybody who comes on, you always ask them, are you a hero or a villain? And I was like, oh, if I ever go on Whitney's podcast, I know exactly how I'm going to answer that, because my answer is yes, both. Because I know that I'm a hero in so many stories, but I know that if the story was flipped, my I am the villain in my sister's story. I know
Right.
that. Like, factually, her perspective is that I am the bad guy.
Right.
And I was kind of thinking about that. Like, how would I feel if it were flipped? How would I feel if my sister were creating a book or whatever about her experience? And I think I've worked on my own brain enough that I'd probably actually be happy for her, because that means like she's feeling good and she's feeling healed, maybe, and like working through it.
Process of
But
it. Yeah.
yeah, I just always
I
wonder,
totally
like, what if it were the other way?
Well, it's interesting also, like as you say that, because my ex is a musician, and I was really afraid of the music that is going to be released, because I don't feel like, I mean, this is just my own fear, maybe, but it would be really easy to paint me as a villain, I think, because my career took off as soon as he left. And
Mm-hmm.
so, and I think just being like, I think women in power are often villainized, and
Mm-hmm.
people who say that they want to be famous or villainized,
Yep.
and I don't see it looking good for me. That said, I think I also, during this conversation just now, I'm like, all's fair in love and war, and like, really and truly, if he wants to come and build a platform sharing his side of the story, like, I would encourage him to do that, because I don't think that that's going to take anything away from me or my story. And if that's,
Mm-hmm.
this is, if that's his way of creatively expressing himself, I think he's entitled to take up space as well. I think what
Mm-hmm.
in the back of my mind, I'm like, but I'm always going to be more famous than you, so have fun, have fun doing that. But I really do. Like, there are two sides, and he's entitled to his. And if he wants to share his, then that's his prerogative. I'm of the belief that if you don't want people to know something that you did, then you shouldn't do it. Not that you should
Mm-hmm.
control whether or not people tell it. And so
Yeah.
that's something that I stand by all of my actions at every point of the way.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe he feels the same. And but
Yeah.
yeah, but
And that's a really good point, because I feel that way. Maybe that's why I don't feel like, what's the word, that I feel nonplussed if my sister were to share her perspective of the story, because I'm like, I would never, like, I think that I could be perceived as like abandoning the family because I went to college and things like that. And I'm like, I would
right.
never choose different. Like, I stand by my choices.
Well, the people in your life now too also would stand by your decisions, and that's the same with the people in my life. And I don't think that's something I've always had until recently, is
Mm-hmm.
having a community that, like, even if no matter who goes and drags me and whatever they say, like, I feel like I'm finally actually understanding, like, oh no, I actually only care about the people in my life's opinion about me.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what I actually find really interesting? This is what I was just thinking about too, is my plan for this section of all the books that I'm writing, this young adult section, is I have, it's like a trilogy, and then there's going to be a prequel. So there's like book one, two, and three that are my story. And then I'm writing a prequel that, so I think it's really interesting how I feel differently. I'm writing a prequel because I have so much compassion for my mom, because of, I do truly believe my mom, I believe everybody does the best with what they have, but I can see so powerfully like who my mom was before poverty and an abusive husband, and who she was after poverty and abusive
Wow.
husband, and how that
Wow.
changed her and made her like the negligent alcoholic mother that I had. Right. And
Right.
so the prequel that I'm writing is going to be her story, because she's going to look like a villain in books one, two, three. And I want to have that prequel so that people see what poverty fucking does, and that it's like it's her fault, but it's not her, like, you know what I mean? I just want to
Totally.
explain that. And so
Well, and
the
that's
prequel will be like a tragedy, basically. And then in book two, my brother's going to be in the story. And I have the same, I'm going to do like a fifth book that's kind of like same timeline, but from my brother's perspective or my brother's character's perspective, because everybody now is like, they're not real people, they're characters. But because also when my parents divorced, my brother was the only one who stayed with my abusive father. So my brother, who was abused on the regular, that changed who he became, and there's a reason why he becomes a villain in my story. But then I also think what's so interesting and is my one sister who's like upset and have feelings. She's like actually not like she's just kind of like a bully big sister, like a regular big sister in my book. So like if she reads my book, it's not even like she's not like a bad person in it or anything. She's just
Yeah.
like the sister who like pulls my hair and yells at me, which is like a lot of sisters.
That
So,
seems
so
that seems
she doesn't
fair.
get a side along book, but yeah.
Well, I love that. And I love how, I think that's just the goes to show like the importance of art. I think it can be easy to just be consumed by content. And I do believe that content is art and is an art form, but I also think it doesn't always leave as much room for nuance and for
Mm,
being able to kind of, it is easy to just paint, your mom as, oh, abusive alcoholic, terrible. And I think having the space to be like, and this is why, like, those are the
mhm.
stories that we need, because I think we all do find ourselves in these moments of, even if we see ourselves as heroes, there are moments that we're more of the quote unquote villains. And
Mhm.
I think we just need more, we need examples that there are nuance and there's,
Yeah.
we really are all just doing our best.
Yeah. I love that so much. Okay, I think those are all the notes that I took of things that I wanted to ask in our conversation. This was so, I know, helpful for me and insightful for me. So I know other authors or people who grew up in unstable childhoods or anybody who's trying to move forward with any dream or goal they have will really benefit from this. Is there any lasting, lingering words or things that you want to say to people who are watching this and have listened to this?
I don't think so. I mean, I just again want to like thank you, and I'm so proud of you as a friend and obviously as a coach as well, but I just think that the work you're doing is so important and so powerful, and it's such an honor to be able to like see that, I like birth of this creativity come to life, and I'm just so excited for you and for everything that's to come.
Thank you. I feel the same also for you and everything that's coming because we kind of hinted at this when we were talking about your business scaling because you are moving back into the space where like you've been coaching, but you get to move back into the space also where you are doing your art like outside of coaching in the world. You guys, Whitney's going to write a movie and a TV series. You're going to start doing a YouTube TV series and you have a book coming out.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot.
It's incredible. You're like, wait, don't remind me. I've just calmed my nervous system. No, it's going to be so amazing. I can't wait for all of
I've
it.
always wanted. So yeah, I feel very grateful.
Well, cheers to everybody doing all the things and all the art and all the creating.